Oh, thank you for inviting me back.
I wish it would be for better circumstances, but at the moment, a lot of things are going really, really bad. We first need to talk about our colleague Jacques Baud, who since yesterday, today we're speaking on December 16th, yesterday, December 15th, he just was sanctioned by the European Union. Jacques Baud, of course, is a Swiss colonel, a former Swiss colonel, now retired, living in a European country. And he's been on your podcast, he's been on my podcast, and he is giving brilliant analysis on especially Ukraine and Russia. He wrote books about Ukraine and Russia and the Ukraine war, the origins of it. And now the European Union is accusing him of spreading Russian propaganda and put him on the sanctions list. Could you believe it when you heard that?
Well, it did take me by surprise. Well, mostly because they went after someone of his stature, which was interesting. But it is a direction which the EU has been going. That is, you've spoken as well about the decision to sanction German citizens who's been reporting abroad, who can't come back home, who have their bank accounts frozen. So we kind of been, it's not the end of the story. That's whenever you see these horrible things happening now, you have to see it in the context of where we're going. But I guess, well, what makes this so extra horrific, though, is not just that he's a colonel from Swiss intelligence, but the main topic I always discuss with him is his concern for how the EU is pursuing policies which undermines its own economic and security interests. And part of the reason is the EU locked itself into narratives. It doesn't accept any dissent. So even if you have facts which can be verified, then it's not allowed to enter the discourse if it undermines the narrative. And he, as an intelligence a colonel in Swiss intelligence, he's very concerned, because if you're not able to identify the main issues, the main problems, then you can't resolve it, and you can't act in your own interest. So this is the main approach. And this, they said, well, this is Russian propaganda, and this is like a word now you can just throw out. It doesn't have to be proven. They use these little catchphrases like Kremlin talking points, as if your argument sounds a lot like what the Russians might say. Hence, you're a propagandist. I mean, because the EU is always right, the Russians are always wrong, and if you contest this, well, that's because you stand on the side of the Russians. So this is not good times in Europe.
No, not at all. And you're right about the context. And I must also add here, and that he's not the first Swiss who was included in the EU sanction list. Before him, in June this year, Nathalie Yamb was added to the sanctions list. She's a Swiss Cameroonian binational, but she's been living in Switzerland, and she's Swiss, I mean, born in Switzerland and has Swiss passport and everything. And shame on me, the news didn't travel all the way to me. I didn't see that. I didn't actually realize that. But already in June, she was put on the sanctions list, and she told me just a moment ago when I finally reached out to her, that this had very severe impacts on her. Although Switzerland is not in the European Union, the Swiss banks still froze her bank accounts, and she cannot fly over the European Union. So I'm not going to tell you where she is right now, but it means, like, being abroad, you cannot go back to Switzerland. Being in Switzerland means you cannot go abroad because you're locked in. Switzerland is completely surrounded by the European Union. So this is very, very severe and draconic. And we're talking here about just accusations, right? Nothing proven in a court of law. I mean, Glenn, what does this tell us about the state of the European Union? It's not even, this is a punishment not given out by the judicial branch. This is the executive branch that hands out punishments on private citizens of our countries.
No, well, this is no democratic control. There's no scrutiny. This is, as you said, this is the unelected EU European Council, just pushing out these decisions. And of course, if you go to the EU's own website, then you see also how it's framed. That is, the name of the document is it's a decision concerning restrictive measures in view of Russia's destabilizing activities. So you argue then that Russia's destabilizing Europe, which means, well, how would you operationalize this? What exactly would this translate into specific activities? And then it finds that whoever might make points or arguments which could be seen as supporting or legitimizing Russia, they are destabilizing because they are threatening the EU. And also, if you criticize the EU leadership or their decisions, well, you're kind of also then destabilizing, because if people might lose trust in the EU leadership. So any dissent now can be seen as destabilizing, because stability in their view is that we all agree that this is our conflicts with the Russians is a black and white story. It's a fight of good versus evil, the forces of light versus darkness. And if you are now taking the side of darkness by trying to defend them, which means explain what Russia is doing, then you can be seen as a destabilizing force, and they will come for you as well. I mean, of all people, to go after Colonel Jacques Baud, this is really, yeah. It can't be explained in a sensible way. They have to talk in cliches and slogans and this kind of ambiguous ideas of destabilizing Europe by questioning its leadership. I mean, this is where we are now.
But also Nathalie Yamb. I mean, she is an anti-colonialist. I mean, she's trying to cry out about all of the hurt that is still caused, especially by France on the still like the neo-colonial behaviors of France. And I mean, this kind of rhetoric is exactly what we said is our human rights for and the freedom of expression and so on, right? So that citizens can criticize their states and the environment that they live in, so that we can have a healthy democracy, right? And I thought at least, even if the European Union is imperfect and our Western democracies are imperfect, I thought at least the separation of power is working. But again, this is a punishment from an executive branch on individuals that have been not found guilty in any court of law. How is it possible that the executive right now in the EU is able to amass all of these powers? And maybe we can also put it into the context of the frozen Russian assets, that, this is, I mean, they're jumping over like so many legal requirements that you would think are there in place in order to make sure that you don't have an overstepping of an overreach of power. And they are now the executive is able to breach all of that.
I was just going to compare this to the stealing of the Russian assets, because in the EU, of course, they had this voting every 6 months to vote whether or not to extend the sanctions, and they have to be all in agreement. But now, of course, that they see that they're losing the argument, the war might come to an end. They have then the pressure that some of the member states don't necessarily want to vote to renew the sanctions, and also many member states are a bit frightened that the EU will essentially now break all rules, essentially taking the Russian assets, something that's never been done before. So it is quite extreme. And so what does the EU do? Because when it meets opposition, what does the European Union do? Well, it just plows through. So now, of course, they suspended this. There will be no more voting. They just changed it. Now the assets are permanently frozen. In order to release these assets, you have to now have all members agree to release it. So even countries like Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, which are very Russophobic to the core, they would never release anything. So unless they're under great pressure. But so this is, and how was this done? How is this legal within the European Union? Well, it's not. But the rules, they don't mean anything anymore. It's just nonsense. And I just want to add one thing more on Jacques Baud, because again, I have the document here of the EU Council, when it says that, he says former Swiss Army colonel and strategic analyst, blah, blah. He's a guest on pro-Russian programs, television and radio programs. Pro-Russian. So it's not even Russian. they're seen as pro-Russian. What exactly is pro-Russian? If you're an academic, you want to unpack this. Does that mean that you think that it's important to have good relations with Russia, which is the largest country in Europe? Do you have to hate the Russians? I mean, does it mean that you support the Russians against the West? I mean, it can mean everything and nothing. So they just throw these terms out, pro-Russian. He acts as a mouthpiece. I mean, and then the evidence they use is he's responsible for supporting these conspiracy theories. And the one example they give out here is, for example, accusing Ukraine of orchestrating its own invasion to join NATO. Now,